Hello, and welcome to a little book bag extra, a review of the recent Stoke Newington Literary Festival. I've been involved with it for a few years now, and it's always such a brilliant weekend. I've got the bag, as you can see. That's from a few years ago when it was based at Stoke Newington Town Hall. We're now mostly hanging around Newington Green and the Mildmay Club, the most amazing venue, a kind of old school working men's club with a real retro vibe and some great rooms to have events in. I was actually round the corner, or just next door rather, at the Newington Green Meeting House to do an event with debut novelists, which we called the Rising Stars event. It's always really good fun. It's a free event. Not many festivals have such good events that don't cost money. So that's one of the festival freebies, so it always goes down well. And I was interviewing a wonderful lineup: Maddie Mortimer with Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, a heartfelt, quite extraordinary novel about a woman, quite a young mother at the end of her life, with cancer that kind of interrupts the text, a voice, a kind of external voice that butts in, disrupting things, as of course cancer does. And that was longlisted for the Man Booker, and it won the Desmond Elliot. So that's already a big success. So it was great to meet Maddie and talk about the book. She rather rejected the idea that it was experimental. I mean, it's not experimental in the sense that it's difficult. It's playful, edgy, interesting, really fantastic novel. And then we had Sarah Thomas. I really loved her novel Queen K. And this is backed up by Sarah's own experience as a tutor to very wealthy families, including oligarchs. It's partly set on the yacht of the same name, which is named after the wife of the fictional oligarch. It's chilling, quite poignant and sad. We talked a little bit about why the rich people in the novel are not necessarily happy. Anyway, it's a sort of thriller with a real heart to it. And completing the lineup was Stephen Buoro, who he lives in Norwich now, and his novel is set in his native Nigeria, and it's got the most fantastic voice. The novel is The 5 Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa, who is a young Catholic boy growing up in a town in Nigeria that's actually more Muslim dominated, and it's an incredibly funny voice. He's a very ebullient narrator. Nothing really seems to get him down for long, which is just as well, because there are some seriously challenging and tragic events in the novel, and a wonderful relationship with Andy's mother, who is a photographer. The sort of mother-son relationship is beautifully done. That's probably about the only link I could make between these three very diverse books, is that mothers feature very heavily. Obviously, mothers in Maps, the mother in Maps is slowly dying but still living while she's doing it. And the mother, the Queen K of the title, is the mother of the wife of an oligarch and the mother of a child who's struggling somewhat with her role in life and her station in life. So that's about the only way I could draw the three together, but they were three fantastic writers to talk to. We had a great hour and some lovely questions at the end from the audience. And then I went off to see an event, actually, which was Joe Dunthorne and Richard Millward, who kind of interviewed each other and did it rather brilliantly, I must say. So the first half hour was Richard Millward talking about his novel that is written in Polari. It's called Man-Eating Typewriter. And part of it is the real Polari, and part of it is a sort of made-up Polari. I mean, I guess you really could call this an experimental novel, but he read from it absolutely hilariously. There's a scene in Gibraltar that, well, I've never seen that go down in Gibraltar. And Gibraltar is one of my favourite places. It just sounded mind-boggling and brilliant and really good fun. And he's such a great speaker. I actually put my hand up at the end to ask him how Middlesbrough had shaped his writing. And it has quite a lot. I mean, the people of Middlesbrough are very plain talking and humorous, and that's what's gone into the book. So Joe Dunthorne, the novelist and poet, interviewed him for the first half hour, and then they swapped roles, and Richard interviewed Joe. Joe is the author of the novel Submarine, that's memorably made it into a film. And I actually got his poetry collection at the end and got it signed. Terrific poet. He actually read from a short story. It worked really well. I hope this thing of authors interviewing each other doesn't catch on, otherwise it'll put me out of a job. I have seen authors interview other authors and they haven't necessarily been that great at it, but this really worked well. A, they're such nice guys, and two, they're clearly very good friends. So that was a lot of fun. Then I had another gig. This is the programme, by the way. It's always shocking pink. I always go for that. I did an interview later on in the main room of the Mildmay about this book, A Heart That Works by Rob Delaney. You'll probably recognise him from the series Catastrophe. He's also a stand-up comedian. So Rob dropped into the green room, and I'll say a bit about the green room. Actually, it's probably the least healthy green room you can possibly imagine. It's filled with with beer, Tunnock's tea cakes, and packets of mini cheddars. So that's what keeps you going through a busy day at the literary festival. And it's very tiny, so everybody's crammed in. So I don't know if Rob has claustrophobia, but he didn't stay in it very long. He arrived and then immediately went for a walk. But I managed to grab him. I mean, this is such a heartrending book. It's about a wonderful little guy called Henry, his son Henry, who died aged only 2, having been... it is a really sad story, and I didn't know how I would hold up, quite frankly. But he was diagnosed with a brain tumour at 1, so the last year of his life is spent going to Great Ormond Street and other hospitals, and it's that story really. So I felt it was important to say to Rob, are we okay talking about all of this? Just because he'd written it doesn't necessarily mean you can, just emote on stage. Can I ask anything that's in the book? And he said, well, you can ask, which wasn't terribly reassuring, but actually he was wonderful. He was very forthcoming, very funny. I mean, there is a lot of humour in the book, as well as the sadness. And I did manage to keep it together. I think right near the end, I was having a little bit of a wobble. But it's an amazing book, actually. And it is filled with this kind of this wisdom, really, that I guess you only get if you're in that tremendously difficult situation. You feel like there's a gulf between you and everybody in the world who hasn't experienced the same terrible, crushing loss. But yes, he was wonderfully forthcoming, and it was a very, very sort of heartfelt, difficult hour, but wonderful to have spoken to him and to have met him. So that was an extraordinary experience. So I think then I went to something which sort of almost light relief, actually, after that, which was, or did I go home? I might have gone home. No, I did in fact go to, for a brief period, about half of the event with James Brown, who was the editor of Loaded magazine, talking to Irvine Welsh, a very sort of fit and dapper looking Irvine Welsh, it must be said. So that was in two halves. So I went to the first half, and it was a really interesting story about how he got started in journalism and what music journalism was like when he arrived. He's of course the great disruptor with Loaded, and it was fantastic to hear about those far off days with the NME and so on, round about when I was starting in journalism as well. So off I went, and I came back the next day just for the pure fun of it, just to hang out. So people I bumped into, it was nice to bump into Joe Thomas. I didn't go to his event. I was going to another event at the same time. His book, he's written a crime novel called White Riot, so I'm hoping to get hold of that and maybe get him in the book bag. I went to this is a regular event, Light Rising Stars, which is Jukebox Fury, which is hosted by an incredible guy called Richard Boone. It says he's the former manager of the Buzzcocks, not the Buzzcocks. Don't say that. Former world's coolest librarian, TM. Didn't know that. So he has a music panel and people play music and everybody sort of decides whether it's a hit or a miss. It's really good fun. So on the panel were the musicians Max Desharnais and Mickey Berenyi, who was fantastic fun in the green room. Actually, she was a great person to rub up against in the green room. And Travis Elborough was there with his trusty Polaroid camera. He took a fantastic Polaroid picture of her, which of course she couldn't have because it's a Polaroid and there's only one of them. Apparently they're quite trendy now. The film is incredibly expensive, but I said, doesn't that make it a bit like an NFT? I don't think anybody could really respond to that, but it did make me wonder. Anyway, so that was an hour of musical fun and knowledge. I never know any of the songs, but it's really enjoyable. And then I went to a poetry reading in the evening at the Mildmay Club, the upstairs room. This was hosted by Nathan Evans, who, as MC, think cabaret, really, think Joel Grey. He read some of his own poetry. His collection is called Knut, kind of visual pun, you have to imagine that. And top of the bill was Joelle Taylor with her rather more forthrightly titled Cunto, which has won so many awards, including the Polari Prize, of which I'm a judge. And what can you say about Joelle? What a performer. She is absolutely off the scale. She read from Cunto so brilliantly. Really sort of whipped us all up. Also on the bill, there was Keith Jarrett. It says he's the UK Poetry Slam champion. I didn't know his work, but I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And a couple of other terrific poets as well. So that was a great way to round off the whole festival. Super enjoyable as ever. And I hope to be involved next year as well. Bring on the Tunnocks, Teacakes and the mini cheddars, and I'll be there. Thanks for watching.